You're listening to What's Contemporary Now, a show about culture and the people, places, and things that together make it up.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Creative industries appear to change more frequently than any other, but if you take a moment to look closer, you'll find those whose influences stood the test of time. Marie-Amélie Sauvé, often referred to as Marie-Amélie or simply Mass, is one such person. Having first started off at French Vogue at the time of Helmut Newton and Guy Bourdin, her reach has remained entirely intact, and the hand of her creativity has most certainly been felt by the talents, designers, and editors whose world she's been a part of. Today we discuss the makings of a mastermind and the biannual title she founded that's an example of fantastic curation while appearing as proof that mass doesn't have to be mass culture to be coveted.
This is Marie-Amélie Sauvé, and we are talking about what's contemporary now.
Marie-Amélie Sauvé, you started working in fashion when you were 19 years old, which is crazy to think about, and I'm sure you have incredible stories to share. But let's start at the beginning, because fashion wasn't a foreign subject in your household, was it?
Alors, not at all. What I would say is growing up in France, fashion was part of the culture. It was something that to me was like the cuisine, the gastronomy, literature, all those things that are very important for France and for Paris. It's part of the daily life. So fashion was almost part of my lifestyle.
And it was also a part of your mother's lifestyle, right?
Yeah, completely. She was completely obsessed with fashion. She went to a fashion school where she would do fashion drawings. And I think unconsciously, she always pushed me to have a career in fashion because she didn't have a career in fashion. And she was the one to find me my first internship at Vogue Paris.
Yeah, I was reading that. So how is it that she had a connection to get you in at French Vogue?
Yeah, she had a connection. I think she had a friend who was working there. And at that time, I was studying modern literature at La Sorbonne. And she found me that internship. And it was a totally new work for me. I was really impressed. And I will always remember the first day I came to Vogue. I think it was a little Hôtel Particulier Place du Palais Bourbon, which is a very beautiful place, in the 7th. And I remember going into a tiny room where the editorial team were working. I remember the first person I saw was André Léon Tallet, and he was working American Vogue, but he was freelancing, and he was freelancing at French Vogue. And I remember also at the same time, Helmut Newton was there, Guy Bourdin was there, and everybody was in that tiny room, discussing the couture shows.
I mean, what an incredible time in the history of the industry to start, and what a list of legends to encounter at the very beginning. How would you describe the role a magazine like French Vogue played in the world, not just in the industry at that time?
For sure, at that time, what was very important was the artistic point of view, especially for French Vogue. You had British Vogue, American Vogue was a little bit more commercial in a way, but French Vogue was really, really free. We were very free to do whatever we wanted, basically. It was very artistic and very incisive also. And I think we were really pushed to create the most incredible pictures. We had to do the most even shocking pictures, because at that time Bourdin was doing kind of a bit controversial. We would say that now, the pictures, or even Helmut Newton, the pictures were quite controversial.
Mm-hmm.
We were pushed to do those very incredible fashion pictures. We had advertisers, of course, like all the other magazines. But I think the advertisers were trusting the magazine to do whatever they wanted with their product in a way. We were much more free from their judgment. I feel that now it's a bit more difficult than before.
Well, it's more of a business now, right?
At that time was a business, but really the freedom was first, for sure.
And creatively, what sort of influences would you attribute to that time as far as the discovery of your own language as a stylist and the way you became an image maker?
No, I mean, I was very spoiled. It was the best school for me because I had the best photographers in the world. Except for Bourdin, who was a French photographer. All the other ones, Newton was German, but the rest, Norman Parkinson, Bill King, Arthur Elgort, all those photographers were American.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned from French Vogue, I learned a lot. I learned everything about fashion photography.
Yeah, I mean, that's a legendary era as roots.
Yeah.
And today it's much more common for people to enter the gig economy and work freelance or for more independent studios and such. But you decided quite early on to kind of leave the warm, cozy halls of the halo of French Vogue and become a freelancer. What was the reason behind that decision at first?
I learned a lot about fashion photography, but I wanted to dive into how clothes were made. I wanted to better understand how designers who had this enormous power influence the fashion industry. And I wanted to have a more complete experience of fashion itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that time at Vogue, we were photographing more total looks. And I was young, I was 20, and I don't know how to explain that, but it was a difference between my age and what I was photographing at that time. Was a Chanel suit and, a bit ladylike stuff. I really wanted to have another experience and to have an experience much closer to what these designers were doing,
You've actually gone on to hold important roles at a number of different directional publications over the years. So what was it that made you want to start Mastermind in 2017?
Alors, I learned a lot, of course, of those different positions.
Mm-hmm.
And to have all those experiences pushed me to do my own magazine, to express myself completely freely. Because more and more, I was not as free as I wanted. And I wanted also to make a magazine that spoke about the world. Not only fashion, but about architecture, politics, philosophy, cinema, about culture in general. Because in Mastermind, you have 4 big fashion editorials. So, of course, the fashion is very important, but then there are dozens of features that speak about other things than fashion. And my frustration in the other magazine, it was that I didn't find the right balance between fashion photography and journalism. I wanted to have the same balance between journalism and fashion photography and the same level also. Because you can have the most beautiful fashion pictures, but you want also to have the most amazing feature to read, So I was trying to combine those 2 elements in the same magazine.
You do a beautiful job.
Thank you so much. No, it's a hard job, but no, I enjoy it a lot. It's a lot of fun for me.
Well, it's also because I think that in the media and also on an individual level, just in terms of our relationship to content as a whole, we do live in a very reactionary culture today. And there's a certain slowness and curation to the way you put Mastermind together. And it delves deeper than just staying kind of in the obvious zeitgeist. And I was curious as to who was it that chooses the artists, composers, filmmakers, Nobel laureates, and all of these incredible people you feature?
First of all, I created the magazine from scratch. I was thinking a lot about it before to actually do it,
Mm-hmm.
The first prototype. I studied maybe 2 years before how I wanted it to be designed. I direct the editorial team. I direct the graphic design. I review every single thing in the magazine. There is no one story or image in the magazine that I don't choose. So I'm very meticulous. But the magazine is done by chapters. So we define with the editorial team a story for each chapter. And after we choose which mastermind could fit the chapter, So we brainstorm with my team and we found the people we think are the most relevant for each chapter.
It's really beautifully done. And it's also an interesting choice that you've made to be the editorial and creative director rather than the editor-in-chief. Why is that?
I think I'm not the editor-in-chief because it's a journalist role and my role is to direct them, to direct the editor-in-chief, it was more important for me to have that position of directing the overall picture. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like editing, for example, the editorial team will come and say, oh, did you see that movie? There is that actor that is amazing in that next movie. I watch always the movie they're telling me to watch, for example, to make my own opinion. And if I like it, we put it in the magazine. Or a book, for example, I read all the books that are in the magazine. So for me, it's more a role of supervising that team of journalists that I have.
You guys also have that page, I think it's called First Words, which sort of feels like it's in place of a traditional editor's letter. And the one in the current issue refers to the collective desire for something different, which absolutely resonates. So I wanted to pick your brain a little bit on what new or different things have caught your eye recently, and whether or not that was sort of something to do with the theme of silence.
Yeah, because we were talking earlier about silence, but it's an important part of every issue of Mastermind, because we live in the age of information. We are always distracted all the time. And the purpose of Mastermind at the beginning, when I created it, is to slow down, to take time to yourself, to read deeply. And I wanted to create an object that you can keep and read, but not in 2 seconds, of course.
Mm-hmm.
A book, a kind of book that you keep on your coffee table and read it little by little. For this issue, what was new for me is to hear, for example, Kate Winslet saying that she didn't want to be retouched, which is very rare. Because when you put actresses in the cover, they are very picky, very specific. They want to edit the pictures. They want to have certain, retouching. She was amazing. I must say she chose the picture we choose. She said that she didn't want any retouching.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very new to have this idea of resisting the diktat in your life of always being young, having this perfect Instagram life, instead of being true to ourselves, So it's silence. It's about silence and about that too.
You actually have 2 covers this issue, including Elliot Page. So what was the kind of thought process behind selecting these people, or your process in general when it comes to cover cast?
Elliot for me, is like a kind of hero, a very courageous actor and writer advocating for trans rights, which is very different from Kate Winslet. But I like the idea to have 2 masterminds, but completely different. So Mastermind is also that, to have 2 different masterminds, not opposite, but in their own way, completely different,
And time is something that we've actually been exploring more this season. It's relativity, or what speeds it up, what slows it down, how things can feel kind of aligned and timely or misaligned with the time that we're in. But as someone who's maintained the creative influence that you have across decades, how would you describe your relationship to something like time?
I think it's very important, because for me to have a meaningful influence, you really need time. It's partially why I choose to do a magazine that comes out twice a year, because if you want to be truly influential and inspiring, you need time to dive into your convictions and your choices. And you need maturity and time to search inside yourself. Because I think if you have news constantly, you have this mass of information, you get lost very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And the quality is not always there. So when you have time, of course, you mature your ideas, you get a better results. The impact will be, I think, at the end, much more timeless and influential to me, But I think nostalgia is part of us. But we have our childhoods. It's what builds us, so we can't avoid that. But we can't pretend that nostalgia doesn't exist. It's part of ourselves in a way. And we need to also to learn to deal with it and take strength from it. Because to me, we should not live in nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Kate Winslet, when you look at the interview, she worked hard all her life. She comes from very poor background. And today she's connected to her past in a very healthy way, because when you see that at the end, she doesn't want to be retouched and everything, I think it's a very good thing.
Yeah, she's an incredible woman. I loved that article. We're talking a lot about your work in the space of magazines and as an editor and a curator, but you've also had different kind of hats worn throughout your career. And it feels a little bit reductive to just say that you're a stylist, because obviously you work with brands in a much more layered and complex way. So if you were to explain to the simple person what it is that you do, how would you break down your role?
It's very difficult to define myself. I don't see myself as a stylist anymore, but it's true that when I have a project, I like to be a part of each different step.
Well, when you're working with brands, I mean, you're working across artistic design on product to communication strategy.
Yeah, communication strategy, and it depends also of which brands, I work differently for different brands.
Actually, that's a really good question. What is it that draws you to a brand when you decide who it is that you'd like to take on?
Usually we were always calling me at some point when the brand was dead, It's always like that. Can you help us to rebuild that brand? I say, oh yeah, for sure. For me, it's fun.
Yeah.
When they don't exist anymore because you have a free page, you have a white page. It's when your imagination is starting. You say the name of a brand and I have instinctively a vision for that brand. So, and I like when they are completely dead. I like to really rebuild brand from scratch,
Well, we can't talk about this without touching upon the iconic era of Balenciaga under the reign of you and Nicolas, and then, of course, obviously what the pair of you have created with Louis Vuitton. Why is it that you think you guys have had such an incredible, long-lasting and productive relationship?
With Nicolas, we met a very long time ago when we were much younger, of course. So it's true that in a way, we grew up together. First of all, Nicolas is a very inspiring person and charismatic. He's a true artist. And I learned a lot from him, and we have a lot of things in common too. I think we both have very high expectations of ourselves and value precision also.
Mm-hmm.
So it's why we get along. I think we were not afraid, and we were free in our mind.
And how is it that you go about maintaining that mental freedom? Because obviously it's such an important aspect of being creative and remaining sort of modern.
But you have to be free. You should never, ever think about restriction. I never, ever think about that. I don't want to hear anyone, It's terrible, but I am alone in my head. I know I don't want to hear anything. I don't listen. It's difficult to influence me, and I don't want to hear so much.
Well, if not people, what is it that you credit as your biggest influences as a creative?
I think the most important is to keep your eyes open to everything around you, like music, books, film. You need to not to be influenced too much, but you have to be like a child in a way when everything is a discovery, everything looks marvelous. Because I think when you get older, you can become very sure of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to stay very naive in a way, to have that curious attitude and keep at the same time an open mind.
You've really been a part of such directional moments throughout the decades that you've been in this industry, and fashion has not always been the same as it is today. It's a much larger business. It's a much larger part of the culture, and it's changed a lot of the nature of the game.
Because there is more players,
Mm-hmm.
You should be even more directional than before, to me. Because of that, because there is a lot of people, if you want to stand out, but I talk about also younger people, if they want to stand out, you have to be extremely directional to have a very, very strong point of view, very strong message, the most important, not to be influenced by others, to be very personal.
Personal, absolutely. It's also interesting because you've remained kind of elusive over the years. And obviously, as I mentioned before, everything you do has such intention to it. And there was a time I recall you sharing a bunch of your moments of practicing yoga on things like social media. Is that still something that you enjoy?
I love yoga and I try to practice every day. I do that specific yoga called Iyengar yoga.
Okay.
It's more about alignment and precision, which I like a lot. And what I like also about that practice is even if you get better and better, you are never perfect. And I have that same thing in my work. For my work, you are always searching for that perfection that is never attainable, you know? So even for my magazine, when I look at it, I said, oh, that's good. But the next one, maybe I hope will be better.
Mm-hmm.
I like that research of like perfection and that is never attainable, because yoga is why I love yoga, you know. It's for your mind also. It's good for your body, but it's good also for your mind.
It's very living the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what else keeps you grounded and inspired these days?
I think what is most important for me now is the time and space.
Mm-hmm.
Having the time to slow down, to take the time to work on what you like, to do things you like. For example, for me to read, watch movies, and also space, because I think it's super important to have enough space for yourself, you know, around you, for yourself. Those two notions for me are very important.
They're a perfect primer and a little bit of a lead up to our last and final question, which we of course have to ask. What is contemporary now?
But again, for me, I would say that, you know, what is contemporary now is to have enough time and not to be taken by that life too fast, and protect yourself from that. I think just take time to do exactly what makes you happy.
I couldn't agree more. That's great advice to all of our listeners. Thank you so much for this conversation.
No, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of What's Contemporary Now. A special thanks to our producer, Sasha Grinblatt. Audio post-production by Chase Coughlin, with original theme music by Joseph Topp-Miller and Chase Coughlin of The Black Soft. And visual design by Aaron Meager and Graham Prentice. Subscribe now to be the first to catch new episodes each week. And if you've enjoyed listening, we'd love to hear from you. Leave us a review and let us know your thoughts. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners like you. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn for additional content and join the conversation. Let us know what you think is contemporary now.